Okay, let's take this one step further. Someone told me, a Christian told me, the Lord spoke to her and said, when the Pope comes to New York in April of this year, 2008, something's going to happen. God is going to say something extraordinary. An extraordinary positive event is going to occur. I said, fine. That's great. Wonderful. This was about March. This person doesn't hear from God like this. This person doesn't normally talk that way by saying, oh, the Lord spoke to me, or I saw a dream, or I had a vision. Some Christians talk like that. This Christian doesn't particularly have that dynamic working in their lives. So this was pretty rare, and I believed it. So she said, something is going to be said, something is going to happen, something positive with the Pope coming. But she seemed it was going to be significant. Otherwise, the Lord wouldn't speak it like that so clearly. I said, okay, can you give me any further insight? Anything else was said? Did you see anything? What was the sense of it? And she said, I can't really say anything except something that you said in your teaching a few years ago about the next move of God. I said, really? She said, yeah, you mentioned something about Oral Roberts had a revelation. Oral Roberts, a very prominent evangelist for many decades, and in 2004 he had an extraordinary series of visions from the Lord, and the Lord really gave him some important information about upcoming events. So she said it made me think of that whole series, that message that you gave, wherein you mentioned that something was going to happen over New York that Oral Roberts had mentioned. So then I said, okay, okay. So I began to try to decipher that, and that took a little while. That took a few weeks, actually a couple of months, to really get it where I think I understand the interpretation. Now, so the Pope did come. Well, there's several things we got to understand. First of all, the Pope is an anointed man of God. As Christians, we have to understand that God uses different people in different ways. And even though I consider myself Pentecostal, Spirit-filled, prophetic, renewal, revivalist, and all of that dynamic kind of Holy Ghostness, but I understand that someone could be have a different kind of a walk with God, and yet it be totally legitimate. And so we have to learn how to validate one another. Protestants have to validate the Pope, and Catholics have to validate Protestants. And so I'm getting there. You know, I like to say we're all children trying to grow up. I'm trying to grow up. And it may take a few years, it may take a few decades, but I'm getting to a place where I love everybody, and I believe everyone has something valid and legitimate to offer, and I affirm what the Lord is doing with the Pope. But now let me go back to Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts, when he heard from the Lord, one of the things that the Lord told him was that there's going to be an attack of the enemy over the skyline of Manhattan. A sort of attack is going to come over the skyline. He said you have to pray against this attack, and the Lord showed him that the hand of God was going to come over the skyline of New York and stop that attack of the enemy. What is the attack? Is it spiritual? Is it invisible? Is it figurative? Or is it a real thing that is going to come to the skyline of New York as an attack? Nobody knows. Oral Roberts, Kenneth Copeland, another prominent televangelist, and others for weeks, if not months, and even to this day, 4 years later, they may still be trying to decipher what exactly is this attack going to be, what exactly does it mean, and when is it going to happen, and how is the hand of God going to stop it, etc., etc. Well, I think I got a handle on the interpretation. Going back to 2004, when Oral Roberts received this revelation from the Lord, he said an attack of the enemy was going to come over the skyline of New York, cover all of New York City, part of Long Island, going over into New Jersey, and he can't define it, but he said, but the hand of God, because of the prayers of God's people, because of the prayers of God's people, the hand of God will come in the air and stop that attack of the enemy. Everyone, millions and millions of people, will see it in the air. They will see the attack in the air, and they will see the hand of God in the air stop it. And as a result, people will cry out in praise to God. And many will be converted, believe on the Lord, and come to Jesus. And there'll be a great, wonderful revival. So that makes sense. But now, what is the attack that's going to happen? And how is the hand of God going to show? Well, I believe in supernatural manifestations. I believe in signs and wonders. I believe in the Shekinah glory coming out of the sky, and angelic visitations and demonstrations. So I like thinking that it will be a literal attack from a literal enemy, and that God's hand will be visible in the clouds coming down, just like Jesus is going to come out of the clouds one of these days, that his hand is going to come in the clouds and stop the attack of the enemy. And that everyone will see it, and many will get saved. Now, Oral Roberts said, when this revival happens, when people see this thing in the air and they see how God delivers us from this attack of the enemy, so many people will be happy about it, and they'll give God praise, and they'll be converted. They'll come to Jesus. He said that the revival that will result will far exceed the revival that occurred on 9/11, when we saw this attack and people started falling out, crying out to God for salvation, and many became Christians after that. Many people really began to seek God around the nation and around the world. People started seeking God as never before for answers to current events and to mortality, seeking salvation and spiritual revelation. So that was a good thing. Some of it stuck, some of it didn't stick. Some people went back to their own normal ways, but some did seek the Lord, and to this day are serving God. But now Oral Roberts said that this next event, when this happens, people are going to get saved by the millions. It's going to be like so much bigger than the event of 9/11. So I said, oh, that sounds great. Now, what is this attack of the enemy? Well, as we see, there was an attack against Obama. The attack against Obama was the machine of the well-oiled political machine contesting his candidacy. And since he is the one that God has chosen to be our next president, the agenda against him, I consider that to be the attack of the enemy. That's the darkness. But it was conquered. It was thwarted by the anointing of God on the Pope when he came in April. So that it was after April that then eventually Obama won the nomination for the Democratic Party. And that's the victory. By that victory, he made history, he changed the world. So that if he doesn't become president, which he will next week, he'll win. But even if he didn't, what he has accomplished, as far as having come as far as he has already changed the world. He has already begun to change the mindset of America with regard to race relations and race perception. So that occurred when he was nominated as a Democratic candidate for the presidency. And that occurred as a result of God stopping the attack of the enemy against that. And the attack of the enemy was here on the East Coast over the skyline of New York, because Senator Hillary Clinton is from New York. And so that answers what was the attack of the enemy that Oral Roberts saw. It was that. What was the hand of God that stopped it? It was the anointing of God on the Pope, probably without his even knowing it, because these spiritual things, they're spiritually discerned, and most people, they cannot decipher it consciously. Some people only get some bits and pieces.